There is something that the Jamaican government should have done a long time ago. The Jamaican government should have partnered with the BRICS alliance a long time ago. And here is why. But before I get into it, if you don't know the face, greetings. The name is Neef and you have entered the chat. Welcome. To officially become a member, please just go ahead and click the plus sign over here and like this video. Thank you. If I was the Prime Minister, I would be sprinting. I'm talking about bolt sprinting to join the BRICS alliance. And here are my reasons why. We would not need to no longer heavily depend on the US dollar and the US economy to secure our economic future. BRICS is developing their own currency and their own financial system that will allow their members to bypass only trading in USD and will also prevent fluctuation in currencies when trading. It is full time we realize the real problem is the USA. For far too long, one country has been given too much power and they have abused it to the point that they have even turned their back on their own biggest allies. We would be in better company for greater trading deals. BRICS nations control over 40% of the world's purchasing power. Why? Well, that's because they produce more and they trade smarter. Citizens in these nations live a way better life because costs stay low. And it is all because of one mindset. And that is you produce what you can and strategically trade for what you can't. For Jamaica, this would simply mean we would cut costs, strengthen trade, save millions, and generate billions. BRICS doesn't dictate who you decide to do business with. There's no political pressure nor interference. Their core principle is sovereignty. Every country runs their own affairs. As long as you honor your commitment, you are free to trade globally. And a prime example of this is Brazil. Brazil is one of their biggest players. However, they still have major trading deals with the US and Canada. And that doesn't affect their membership because BRICS is about cooperation, not control. We would be better secured, protected, and supported under the BRICS alliance. Time and time again, the US has shown and proven to be the ultimate aggressor, sanctioning and starting wars with countries who decide not to kneel to their will and demands, while BRICS has not interfered with internal affairs, while still coming to the rescue of their allies. We see them do it with Venezuela, where they provided military intelligence and artillery support. The same thing for Iran, and they also provided Cuba with humanitarian support. They have proven themselves to be way more loyal to their allies and friends. I'm not here to tell you that BRICS is perfect, as they're far from it, because those leaders demand loyalty, no question. But let's talk facts. The alliance that preaches democracy and freedom has a long track record of pressure, control, and forcing their will on sovereign nation. And when you put both track records together from G7 and BRICS, you will really see who is the real dictator. Alongside that, if you ask majority of the citizens from these so-called dictatorship countries, they will tell you that life is way more stable and manageable and way more cost effective than before. So for me, this isn't about becoming communist or socialist. Jamaica doesn't need that. It's about the mindset, producing more and protecting your people. Because leadership is not about the label or the title. It's about the result. To tell you the truth, if I could speak Mandarin, I'm gonna live in China. My question to you is, do you think Jamaica should join the BRICS alliance? Leave your answers in the comment section and don't forget to follow to be a part of all discussions.
This is one of the most debated topics in Jamaica's economic history, and it might change the way you look at Jamaica. In the 1980s and 90s, Jamaica was in some serious debt and running low on foreign money. So I decided to borrow from the IMF to stabilize the economy. And and these loans would change Ireland's economy for years. Part of the agreement was opening Jamaica to more imports and cutting some government support to local industries. So local farmers and manufacturers had to compete with cheaper foreign goods. Imported milk powder, for example, was much cheaper than local milk, so a lot of local dairy farmers struggled. Over time, Jamaica did slow down inflation and become more careful about government spending and borrowing, but some local industries never fully recovered. The country also became more dependent on imports for things it used to produce locally, and debt has remained a challenge for many years. So the policies helped to stabilize some parts of the economy, but had some serious sacrifices for the country. And that's why so many people still debate it to this day.
What if I told you the biggest economies outside the West are already preparing for a world outside of the US dollar? And most people are not even paying attention. Countries in the BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are expanding and now buying a massive amounts of gold. Not small amounts, we are talking thousands of tons. And gold is now trading near $4,850 per ounce in 2026. But here is the mistake most people make. They think it's about profit. It's not. It's about trust breaking down in the global financial order. In 2022, after the Russia sanctions 2022, over $300 billion of Russia's reserves were frozen. That sent a clear message to the world. Your money is not really yours. It's held in someone else's system. And what did countries do? They moved into gold because gold can't be frozen, printed, or controlled by another government. At the same time, US debt is exploding past $39 trillion. So now you have two forces happening, a system that can freeze your assets and a currency that is being printed at scale. That is why BRICS nations are not just buying gold. They're experimenting a new system, including a gold-backed trade unit. So here's the real questions. Are these countries leaving the system? Or are they exposing a leak in the system that has always been there? Because when the central banks, the smartest money in the world, start moving, they are not reacting, they are positioning. This is your sound money coach, teaching everyday people understand money at a deeper level, protect value, and invest with their purpose. Have a blessed one.
Will you be able to buy BRICS dollars? Like BRICS money, like BRICS bucks? Will you be able to buy that? I'm Kalila Reynolds, financial journalist and educator based in Jamaica. So the short answer is no. Unfortunately, no. I know a lot of you are like, oh, womp, 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 disappointed. But I have to explain what this new BRICS currency is. And first, let me explain what it is not, right? So the new BRICS currency is not intended to replace the currencies of the 5 member countries. So we're talking about Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, all of which, by the way, all of their currencies actually start with an R. So you have the rupee, the ruble, the renminbi, the rand, South Africa. I can't remember which one I'm missing right now, but all of them start with an R. They are going to continue to maintain their individual currencies while having this BRICS currency serve as a currency of international trade and global reserve. So it is not like the euro, for example, which members of the European Union, excluding Britain, adopted in 1999. So when the European Union came up with the idea of the euro and finally adopted it in 1999, those member countries had to give up their individual currencies and instead adopt the euro and then use that for trade both locally and in the European Union within the region. That is not what is being contemplated here with the new BRICS currency. These 5 countries still intend to keep their local currencies, which would be used for local trade, but also have this global reserve currency, the new BRICS dollars, BRICS bucks, that would operate in tandem with it to be used only for the purpose of international trade. Now, the only comparative thing I can think about is something called SDR. It stands for Special Drawing Rights. And this is a special currency created by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And it is basically the weighted average of the currencies of all the member countries of the IMF. And that goes into forming what they call SDR, special drawing rights. And this money is used only for trade, well, you know, amongst the IMF when it's dispersing money to member countries. So it has a very specific purpose, and you can't go to the bank right now and say that you want to trade your Jamaican dollars for SDR. Like that, it doesn't operate like that. And that's going to be the same thing with BRICS. You wouldn't be able to go to the bank, at least not in the initial phases and not how it's being contemplated right now. You wouldn't be able to go to the bank and say, I want to change my US dollars for BRICS money, or I want to change my Jamaican dollars for BRICS money. That is not how it is going to work. Check the link in my bio to subscribe to my newsletter and get money news like this straight to your inbox. KalilaReynolds.com/newsletter. Let's get this money.
We are living, you, me, right now, through a very huge change in the entire world economy. There's many ways to explain it, but I'm going to summarize it this way. For most of the period since the end of the Second World War, so roughly since 1945, the United States was the one super powerful, rich capitalist country. All the others that might have been competitors, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, wrecked by the war. They came out of the war where all the bombs fell, where all the troops were killed, where everything was smashed. Other than Pearl Harbor, at the very beginning, no bombs fell in the United States. No factories were destroyed, no railway lines were destroyed, and we suffered many fewer casualties as a percentage of our people than any of those other countries did. Better, our economy was a disaster in the 1930s, the Great Depression, and it was the war that brought us out. So our economy was stronger at the end of that war than it had been. Whereas everybody else, the opposite, weaker than they had been. So we were king of the hill. The dollar became the global currency, could use it everywhere. Of course. The United States is 4.5% of the population of the world. We have 330 million people. It's about 4.5% of the population of the world. But we accounted in those years, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and all that, we accounted for a third or 40% or 50% of the total output of the world. Europe rebuilt itself, for those of you who know the history, because we lent them the money with which they could then buy the products we were ready to sell them. That was the period of the rising American empire. The previous empire, you all kind of know, the so-called British Empire, collapsed. India, remember, Mahatma Gandhi becomes independent. That was the great jewel of the crown of England, India. So they break away under Gandhi, 1947. It's the end for the British. It's the end for the French. All of those empires gone. Who replaces them economically? The United States. Nobody else can. And we made a fortune of money, and the American economy took off, and we lived in a country that persuaded itself that it wasn't these peculiar circumstances of the war. And no. Built into America is the exceptional quality. We work so hard, and we save our money, and there again we encounter that economic concept, bullshit. And how do we know? Because it's gone. Is never coming back. And that's very hard for all of you. Whether you admit it to yourself, whether you're even conscious of yourself yet. I'm working hard to make you conscious of it. It's over. The American empire is in decline. And that shouldn't surprise anyone, because every other empire in the history of the human race has gone up and then it has come down. Why you would imagine this one would be the one great exception? You have to be even crazier than most of us are. It was never a question of whether, it was only a question of when, and when has arrived. Here are the clues. We lost the war in Vietnam, we lost the war in Afghanistan, we lost the war in Iraq, and we're in the process of losing it in Ukraine. Hint! What is that about? These are not just wars the United States lost, but let's be clear. The United States, one of the richest countries in the world, went to war in countries that are among the poorest in the world and were defeated. Oh my good. That's like the British arriving here in 1776 with their fancy equipment, and those colonial fellows with their muskets defeated them. Very hard on the British. Very hard on us. Can't quite face that. When I give classes in large universities, which I still do, and I explain to my 18, 19-year-old students what I just told you, they look at me. They look at me the way a puppy does when it did something on the rug that it knows it shouldn't have done. Americans don't lose wars. They know that. How? Because that's our culture. When we lose them, we magically make that go away. We have a new world economy. We're not the top dog anymore. It's not that we're losing that position. We lost it. It's gone. Let me give you, because I'm an economist, some statistics, very brief, to chew on. The United States is part of a group of nations that are allied. Well, these days I have to qualify that. Were allied. They're called the G7. It's the United States, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Italy, and Germany. That used to be the powerhouse center of the world in the second half of the 20th century. If you add up the total output of goods and services of the G7, the United States and its major allies, it amounts to about 28% of the total output of our planet. Now I'm going to mention another group, the People's Republic of China and their allies, who have a name. It's called the BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. That was originally 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And another 20 or so, or 18, have joined. That's another block. What is the total output of goods and services of the bloc of China and its allies, the BRICS? Answer, 35% of world output. That's already a much bigger economic unit than the United States and its major allies. It's over. We are not the center of the world economy the way we were. Every country in the world is rethinking its strategy. Political, economic, military, ideological. Every company in the world that has any international business is trying to figure out, what does this mean? When African countries these days are trying to figure out, where do we get the money to build the railroads that we need? They used to go to New York or London or Paris. They still go to New York, London, and Paris, but as soon as that trip is over, they go to New Delhi, Beijing, and Sao Paulo. And they ask each of them, who's giving me the better deal? And they go with the better deal, which is why most of the railroads in Africa today are built by the Chinese, why most of the ports emerging on the coasts of Latin America are Chinese. It's not just your underpants. It's everywhere. And there is no end of that in sight. The International Monetary Fund, a Western agency that cannot be accused of any leftism whatsoever, tells us that in the last year, 2024, the United States economy grew by 2.8%, which was better than all of the other G7 countries. The IMF tells us that China last year grew 5%, double the rate of the United States, and India, another member of the BRICS, grew 7%. In other words, the gap, which is already in favor of China, is growing even more in favor of China.
Transacting in any currency in the world, you don't need the dollar to do it. Mechanically, it's not hard to settle in rupees. It's not hard to settle in rubles. Of course, the question then of the exchange rate and how it's managed and whether it's stable and do you have a lender of last resort behind it matters. There are network economies of scale in money, that money holding assets or denominating transactions in a particular currency is better if others are doing it. And that's why there's a certain lock on things, that the pound sterling lasted a lot longer than the British Empire did. It finally gave up in 1947, but and the dollar hangs on even as the U.S. share of world trade continues to go down. But at this point, because of the weaponization of the dollar, there's now active movement forward.
Yeah, because of interest.
I believe that China will increasingly and systematically internationalize the renminbi in the coming years, and it's taking steps to do that. The Chinese interbank payment system, CIPS, is a part of that. The BRICS bridge is a part of this. So at a technical level, this is not a problem. If rupees are convertible into rubles or into renminbi or into other currencies and they are selling things of interest, there's no problem. And that is how the world's going to be. What is the U.S., the idea, which is now a meme around the world, that, for example, the U.S. has invaded Venezuela to keep the petrodollar in order that the dollar is used, is not good economics, by the way. And the whole idea that the U.S. dollar depended on the agreement with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf to price oil in dollars is not the basis of the U.S. role. Of course, it added to it, but the basis of the U.S. role goes back to the founding of the Bretton Woods system, and it goes to the size of the U.S. economy and to the efficiency of using dollars, the depth of the U.S. financial markets in London and in New York, their unique role, the geopolitics, definitely, but all of the things which gave the dollar its dominance are fading. And especially the misuse of the dollar.
So is it in India's interest to empower China and Russia by trading in that currency, by encouraging trade in that currency?
Yes.
And you don't, and China's Pakistan's best friend right now. Everybody,
Whose best friend is Pakistan? I'm a little puzzled.
Okay.
Which general, where did the general just have lunch? Was it in Beijing or was it in Washington with the President of the United States?
We were talking post-Trump. We're talking post-Trump.
No, I don't even understand that argument. Who brought down Imran Khan? Who has emboldened the Pakistani military in the last 3 years?
It's all been U.S., more than China.
Well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It has been. It was Biden who brought down Imran Khan. Donald Lu, that man must go. And Trump is playing his Pakistan game. So this idea that this is a China thing.
So we can trust China more than America?
It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter that India should say, we need grown-up superpower relations with China, stable, and especially to have our mutual regard so that the United States isn't dividing and conquering.
Correct.
And isn't bullying us. This is extremely important. Here are the two largest countries in the world. And by the way, by mid-century, will be number 1 and 2 in the world economy, overtaking the United States.
BRICS, by the way, means it's the first letters of the countries Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. A dozen years ago, they began to form an alliance of what came to be called the Global South. To be independent, relatively, from the domination of the United States. And the core economy there, the biggest one, the most powerful, is, I'm sorry to tell you this, I know it'll come as an upset, the People's Republic of China. Remember, I'm the messenger. I have no responsibility for this at all. China and the BRICS. Indonesia joined them. Together now, the BRICS, built around China, have as the population of the countries that are part of the BRICS, about 22 countries now altogether. They have about 55 to 60% of the population of the world are members. What is the percentage of the world's population of the United States? 4.5%. You understand? We are 4.5%. They are 50 to 60%. In the words of, Mickey Mouse, uh-oh. Those odds are not so good, no matter how you cut it. And as a group, let me tell you how you cut it. We in economics have this little game. We ask, what is the total output in goods and services in a year of a country? Gives us a kind of rough idea of how big a country it is, how important its footprint is in the world. Okay, so if you take the BRICS, together now, they are about 35%, maybe a bit more, total output of the world. If you add up each of those countries' total output in a year, and you add them up, they account for 36%, more or less, of the world's output. Now let's compare that to the United States and its major allies. Those are called the G7, the group of seven. The United States, Japan, Canada, Britain, France, Italy, and Spain. And Britain, excuse me. Okay, that used to be the dominant player of the world. That used to be what world trade meant, what they did. Together they, that's all of them, now account for about 28% of the world's output. Do you understand? The BRICS is now what the United States was, but is no more.
The biggest insult, and people need to understand this, the reason why South Africa was put into BRICS is because they need South Africa. We have uranium. Uranium powers fuel, so nuclear. It's the fuel for nuclear, right? We're in the top 10 of the largest producers of uranium in the world. Our uranium deposits, I believe, we're definitely number one, but scientists are saying, hey, top 10, other countries also have it, and many of them, they lie about minerals because they're trying to get Africa to lessen the price. People don't know this. When you read state security documents, there are countries that have lied about minerals just so Africa can become a bit calm. Because if we knew that we're the only ones who have it, we'll be stronger. But we'll get to that. If we've got the fuel for nuclear and we continue shipping it to other countries, why aren't we building our own nuclear power stations? Is it because we don't have enough funds? Okay, why are you giving us 160 billion to build windmills instead of nuclear? Why was Jacob Zuma shut down when he spoke about nuclear? And many others agreed. CSIR agreed. And they said nuclear is the way. Why is it that everybody who's now close or friends with the one who's ruling is now building an independent power station? And remember, South Africans won't question this because we're under pressure. We're under pressure. Load shedding has taken away jobs. Load shedding has frustrated. There is no South African that is not at breaking point. So if anybody tells you we are building solar to try and help, you listen. In fact, you'll be grateful. But the truth is that was never the right choice. It was a choice that was carved for us to make sure that we never become the giant that we need to become. Because when you ask Arise and say, Mpo, what are the policies? I immediately tell you, fourth industrial revolution. We're building manufacturing hubs. We're building medical devices. We're building moving cars. I immediately go to manufacturing. And immediately they'll say, let's tame him. Yes, it's possible through 3D printing. Yes, your blockchain can work. Everything you said is right. Where will you get the electricity? Because where there's no nuclear, these things become very difficult to do. Nuclear is the bedrock of the fourth industrial revolution. They saw it coming to say, there's a generation of young people that are into tech that understand how things work. These young people might give us issues in the future. Kill them quick and use electricity to do so. Because not that I have issues with all these things. The issue for me, the biggest issue is in the future, yes, solar panels and everything will give us electricity for what, 5 years? Yeah, we'll come out of load shedding for 5 years. But after that 5 years, we are back to square one, even worse. What could have given us enough energy to build a strong nation? Where everywhere around the world, they say, if you want to build something, in Africa, they have electricity, they have the minerals. Literally, it's in the ground. Whatever you want to build, just go and dig, it's there in the ground. So that becomes one of the biggest frustrations that I've ever seen in our country. And the reason why I said to you that two things would happen to me. One, they'd kill me, or they'd put me to jail. Because when you look at what the Zondo Commission said, and I don't want to get too much into it, we spent 1 billion researching or understanding or uncovering how corruption happened in our country. Essentially, we spent 1 billion rand to find out how 1.5 trillion over 5 years was looted through corruption in our country. Now, the Zondo Commission came out with 8 million pages. I believe I've read more than anybody in this country on the Zondo Commission. I know that many people who talk about it, they haven't even read. There are things in the Zondo Commission, by the way, that when you read, you're like, this is a movie. A woman is brought in from China. She comes, she takes money from the Reserve Bank. She flies out. She's caught in between. There are things that you read and you're like, is this the same South Africa that I'm living in? There are documents there about how politicians funded the Chinese railway using money they stole from Africa in the Zondo Commission. And I said to somebody, I said, the biggest issue we've got is you create an 8 million page document. Now, I'm an author, a best-selling author. So for me, reading, I must read every week.
Let them know, boy. Let them know. Best-selling author.
Every week I have to read, right? And I've got publishing houses saying when you release your next book, because I've understood that reading for me is a precious skill that you must do. And I think for South Africans, reading is supposed to be a very big thing. Because if you come from a, I always tell people that while growing up, I used to read the Bible cover to cover. You ask me about the Bible, it's in my mind. The Bible is not the most funnest thing to read.
I've read it as well. When you speak about the Zondo Commission, I was thinking, when I read it, I was also like, have Christians actually read this thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's not the funnest thing to read. But when you begin, and I haven't just read, I've had to read it to the point of meditating and understanding it completely. So when you understand that culture of reading, a nation can be helped. But we'll get there. I don't want to digress from the Zondo Commission. Now, the issue is 8 million pages. Which young person is going to read it if the literacy rate in our country has been going down? So do you see that there's a strategic evil attack upon our nation to say, dumb them down, that even if Zondo is saying certain things in the commission, none of them will listen. You go to a young person and you say, what happened in the Zondo Commission? They'll tell you Gupta. That's the least of it. That's the least of it. This was worse. There were things there that were worse. And I want to talk about some of them. But before I talk about that, what the Zondo Commission said, the solution that they brought with, and which I agree, they said South Africa must pay whistleblowers. You see what I'm doing now? Coming in, I'm speaking to young people. I'm telling them what happened. I'm revealing secrets. There are people that would kill me. Right? Maybe it might be a bit difficult to kill me because young people have now noticed me. Young people are now following me. People know me. I've got people that are saying, we're backing you, we're with you. I've got people that are saying, listen, we're praying for this thing. God has spoken to us too about our eyes. We're backing you, we're with you. So I've got a force behind me. But think about a young lady who's a receptionist at the Department of Health in Gauteng. Or let's make it a practical example. There was a lady known as Babita who was a financial officer in Gauteng Department of Health. She came out and she spoke and she revealed a couple of billion that were actually stolen or looted in Tembisa Hospital. And what happened to her is when she was coming back home, gunmen came, she was opening up a gate, shot 6 bullets, gone. Her family today is still traumatized. The whole Department of Health is saying we cannot touch that case because the last person who spoke was killed. And what the Zondo Commission said, they said, for us to fix the rot in our government, we must protect.
Dr. Prime Minister Andrew Holness said that he wants Jamaica to become the Singapore of the Western world. That's a very tall order, but I believe it can be accomplished. Because as Shakespeare said, when you dream, dream big, because small dreams have no magic. I watched his interview with Throp, and it was very informative. And he was honest about the things that impacts brand Jamaica, both in a positive and in a negative way. His fiscal management has placed Jamaica in a very strong financial position. This has resulted in the lowering of the nation's debt, which actually also created more money for infrastructure development like roads. Have you ever wondered why the IMF poached Dr. Nigel Clark from the Andrew Holness administration? From my opinion, that is because of good fiscal responsibility. I also believe for them to accomplish the Singapore of the West, the Holness administration has to shift the culture. And that transformation must start from within the schools, because this level of antisocial behavior cannot be a part of any society that wants to be like Singapore. Therefore, let me congratulate Dr. Andrew Holness on that candid interview. However, people, my main focus is results. Jamaica, for too long, has been tainted with indiscipline, high crime rate, incompetence, corruption, and lack of vision.
Oh my God.
Now is the right time for Jamaica to take its rightful place. And for that to be accomplished, Dr. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, it is imperative that you invest more in human capital. Because no matter how many infrastructure development you invest in, if the human capital is not the main focus, then the overall development will be unsustainable. All I want is a better Jamaica, and I will do whatever it takes on my part to help your government, Andrew Holness government, if you are honest and willing to put your money where your mouth is in making Jamaica a place where we in the diaspora can come home, invest, live, and make Jamaica a better place.
So BRICS is an answer to what has hitherto been dominant Western institutions. The fact that leaders of major countries in the world appeared in Kazan in Russia is a statement that we will not allow anything to stand in our journey towards being effective in our participation in world economics. That is why you saw Modi of India, Xi Jinping of China, Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, and indeed many other leaders present saying, we are coming, come rain or shine, because we believe that there is an agenda that is worth pursuing, and we are not going to allow ourselves to be diverted.
The G7, that's the United States and its 6 major allies, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy, only account for 27, 28%. So the BRICS are already a bigger, richer, wealthier part of the world economy. That's why every company has to rethink its strategy. You can't focus on the G7, which for many of them was what they did kind of automatically for the last 75 years. That's not happening anymore. If you send a trade delegation to Washington and New York, which many of them do still, as soon as they're finished in Washington and New York, they go to New Delhi or Beijing or Sao Paulo in Brazil, and they present the same project. And they say, who can help us more? And the BRICS have gone out of their way, as I'm sure they will in the future, to carve their place in the world economy. And they know that the way to do that is to offer a better deal than you can get in the West. They're not stupid. They know the game. It's just like if a new brand of soda pop is available in your neighborhood, it might.
One of the reasons it counts is because their oil and energy is very important, including for China.
Yeah.
And that's very important in the BRICS system. What the BRICS system is trying to do is to create independent payment systems. But if you're going to come out with programmable money, with digital IDs that are interoperable globally and programmable money that controls in each jurisdiction centrally, you can't afford leakage.
We have decided to invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS. The membership will take effect from the 1st of January 2024.
What is going to happen to our economy? Not just let's start with the U.S. economy. I mean, what happens if we have pissed off the GCC so bad that they decide they're not going to trade oil in U.S. dollars anymore?
There is a huge, huge concern. And again, I don't think a lot of people understand why it's important. And again, you hear this from me over and over. You have to go back and look at the history a little bit. You have to know how we got here. The U.S. used to be on a gold standard. And what does that mean? It meant for every dollar you held, it was backed up by gold, right? Well, we went off the gold standard. So what is a U.S. dollar backed by? It's backed by the belief that the U.S. is good for it. A dollar bill, a $10 bill, $100 bill, whatever, is a promise. It's an IOU that says you're going to give them something back that's worth this much, right? If it's gold backed, that means I'm going to get that amount of gold for this. If it's not gold backed, it just means we all agree that this is how much it's worth. Well, that can change overnight. What if we all agree it's not worth that? And right now we use it to trade oil. Every country trades oil in dollars. There's some talk about why that is. And if you look at the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, he talks about how we signed agreements with Saudi Arabia and others that said they would trade in U.S. dollars. That forced the U.S. dollar to have value because you could trade it with oil and everything else, right? But now countries are a little tired of that. By the way, again, this is all one big spider web. Going back to Libya, Gaddafi wanted to form a new currency for Africa called the unit, right? That would not use US dollars. That was sacrilege, couldn't have that. That's another reason we attacked theirs. We couldn't have that. Now, what's the big threat to the US dollar? BRICS.
Mm-hmm.
BRICS wants to get off of the US dollar and have their own trading units that is not US based.
Last time I checked, that went from Brazil, Russia, India, China. Now I believe the last time I checked, there was 22 more countries.
Yeah, people are signing on.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, you hear these conversations, that they have to be happening. I mean, China is engaging other countries and literally saying, hey, we don't have to put up with this shit.
Right. We don't have to. And it's one of those is like, hey, kind of in secret on the side, it's like, let's you and I agree that we don't have to use American dollars. And as soon as enough of us agree, we'll just stop, and we'll switch over to this. But we need enough of us first to make the switch. So right now there's still talk of let's get enough of us so that we can all agree and then do the switch, right? Also, though, you've got a lot of tie-ins with other countries have invested in the U.S. They own buildings, they own land, they own companies, right? So if our economy tanks, their investments tank. Everything is so interconnected. It's not just an easy, we're going to pull out, because we're also going to take a hit then. But then these other countries have to look at it and go, which is worse, this hit or the long-term, stability and freedom to do what we want without someone else telling us what to do.
The movement's growing. BRICS is growing.
That movement around the world is growing.
I'll bet it's going to grow real fast now. What does that look like, though? What does it look like if we don't, if the Middle East no longer trades their oil in U.S. dollars? What does that mean for us?
I don't know. I'm not an economist, and the little I've read, not good. Our dollar value compared to other currencies would decrease. Could decrease to the point of the dollar being worth pennies on the dollar right now. Now, run that out with people's 401ks, retirement. What happens when all of a sudden your retirement is worth 1/20th that you thought it was? That becomes a big issue. That becomes an issue for us as a country, buying goods, services, and food from other countries. It becomes an issue for us as individuals. We're like, hey, I thought I was set up and I had this much value and now I don't. What do I do? It has an issue for young people saying, well, how do I start a family and grow and if what I have is not worth anything? And there are people a lot better versed on this and the economics than me to cover that. Mm-hmm. But not something I would look forward to.
I mean, they're talking about a global depression. A global depression.
Could be, because everything's tied together.
Do you think there is a possibility that they're not... Do you think there's a possibility that all these recent attacks on other countries, pulling Maduro out, Iran, do you think that this is a attack on China's energy? They get 75% of their oil from the Strait of Hormuz. Then there's Venezuela. We snatch them. I'm just asking, maybe if maybe we don't have a full picture.
Well, I don't think we do have a full picture. I think by design, we don't see all of it. The internet has been great in that we get a lot of information we didn't used to. It's horrible in that it's also easy to hide some of the information. You have to really go dig for it to try and find some of these things, and a lot of it is still hidden.
I don't think that. But I'm also trying to think of ways that something that may be a little bit more positive other than we're under Israeli influence. And so even go back a little bit farther, the Panama Canal, which was supposedly controlled by China.
A Chinese company.
We fixed that.
Yeah.
We pulled Maduro out. Now we've bombed the shit out of Iran and they closed the strait.
So you're asking is there a possibility that this is a planned, orchestrated
It's China, the bigger picture.
In order to contain China.
It's China. Now, on the caveat to that, I mean, they're investing, from what I understand, heavily in nuclear capabilities. So I think that would just speed that up, and they don't have to deal with all the fucking red tape that we have to deal with. So I think that would be a, relatively easy pivot for them.
I think it would be an easy pivot for them. And per capita, the U.S. consumes more in oil per person than China does by far. It would hurt us more than it would hurt them. I think if we're looking at ways to contain China, I wouldn't see this as a advisable path. There's too many things that can go wrong and too many things that'll destroy an economy as a side effect. You know what I'm saying? And look at what they're doing with chip manufacturing and robotics and drones and whatnot. I don't think we would contain them by this. It'd be wonderful to think, hey, somebody has a grand plan here. Somebody's got this figured out. I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine, my attorney, actually brought that up to me, and I said, I don't think that, but I hope you're right. I hope there's a broader plan here than what seems to be the obvious. But
there's lots of times I hear some of these, I'm like, God, I would love to believe that.
Yeah,
but call me skeptical.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to sound always doom and gloom, right? That, all of this is bad, everything is falling apart. There's still a lot we can do. America is still, in my opinion, the best country in the world, right? Look at the people we have, look at our land, look at our resources. We have a lot of oil, right? We have food that we export. Our problem, if you will, is we have stretched out so far to try and extend our power and control that we're starting to lose the whole reason for having that power and control, and that is the lifestyle and benefits to American citizens. And that's why, personally, I am a proponent of pulling back some of what we're doing worldwide and concentrating on America. Let's make sure, and again, Iran, is this helping anybody here? I can't see that it is. We're spending a lot of money, and we're not benefiting Americans. We're benefiting Israelis. Certainly not benefiting Iranis. I want to benefit Americans.
Or any of the other Middle East.
Or any of the rest of the Middle East.
Or the world.
Or the world. So let's concentrate on us. That's where I want to go with this.
I think we leave that section for the end.
All right.
But,
why is Trump trying to tariff all the BRICS nations?
His tariff threat to the BRICS countries?
Yes.
So he's threatening the BRICS countries, like saying, hey, you can't form your own currency. If you form your own currency, I'm going to tariff you 100% and you can't trade in the U.S. anymore, basically. And that's what he's said on his Twitter or True Social or whatever post. Why? Well, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, whatever, and a couple of other countries have been trying to get together and not use the US dollar anymore. I mean, Russia, why they don't want the global international systems to be based on the US dollar, because they get sanctioned the crap out of it, they can get. So they want independence from the dollar, right? Which is very, very difficult to do. The threat of them coming up with their own unified currency is not even an issue right now, because, well, the reason is the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, Oil is traded, commodities is traded, everything is done in US dollar. So they want to get away from that. So they've been trying to get together and form their own, either they're using one of their own member country currencies or form like a unified currency.
I keep seeing stuff about people saying that they're buying up all this like gold reserves.
Yeah, because they're trying to come up with like, one of the things that they're trying to do is to come up with a BRICS currency based on backed by gold, whether that's good. But here's the problem though. Okay, why is the US currency, the US dollar, the international, reserve currencies in all countries, right? Because the US basically has very liquid markets, very strong economy, and stable government, which is can be debated recently, but yeah, that's why. So we're a safe haven, right? So all countries in the world want to trade in the US dollar, right? It's just like if you were trading internationally, would you want to sell things in the US dollar, or you want to sell things in the yuan and get yuan, or rubles, which are just tanking right now, right? So logically, there are reasons why our currency is always going to be the primary currency out there because of the fact that we're used as a reserve currency, and almost all international trades are done by the US dollar. But the BRICS nations obviously don't like that, right? Because, they're at the mercy of the US government when everything's traded in the US dollar, basically, right? And they want to do their own thing. Right. But how are you going to do your own thing, right? They want to do something, for example, like what's happened in the Eurozone when they came up with the EU with the Euro. Before the EU came about with the Euro, with a standardized currency among all member countries, there was the Eurozone. But the problem is, look at the political instability in all these countries. They're very, very, very zero-sum type operations in these countries, right? They're very bilateral. So like, Russia has to, Russia has to be able to be integrated with China, with Brazil, and all that. And none of them, I don't think they can even trust each other. Their political systems are not uniform or not unified. They, one's an autocracy, the other one is not, and it's just not going to work, right? It's just like, I put it to you this way: would you, if you're a country trading or an international or multinational corporation, do you want to receive any other currency other than US dollars when you do business? Of course not, right? That's why we are the reserve currency. The US dollar is the reserve currency. They've been trying to do this for a long time. I don't know why, going to the Trump thing, I don't know why he's threatening them, because the threat really is, there's no threat from them. There is really no risk that these BRICS nations are going to form their own currency anytime soon to threaten the US dollar. Not even close. Not even close. Logically, there's no way. I don't know. So to me, why he threatened them?
I feel like the euro is a stronger choice over.
Good God, no! Look at the mess in the euro.
No, but I mean, like over BRICS nations, like why not trade?
Well, but the BRICS nations not part of the eurozone, so they don't care about it.
I'm just saying, like everyone's so worried about this like BRICS thing taking over.
Well, because they're just listening to stupid narratives. There's nothing about the BRICS threat that is anything to worry about. So to me, why is Trump threatening it? He's not worried. You think anyone in his cabinet or his advisors are worried like these guys are going to form their own currency and there goes the dominance of the US dollar? No freaking way.
So it's just rhetoric.
It's not rhetoric, it's a negotiating tool. He's just threatening them. He wants to talk to them about stuff like he did with the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Look, Trudeau came over, Sheinbaum came over, started negotiating stuff. He's doing the same thing, I think. That's why.
All right.
Yeah.
We're always talking about how Africa and the Caribbean must progress, industrialize, add value, how Africa must fund Africa and stop exporting raw materials. But rarely do we stop and talk about what that actually really takes in practice and which institutions can help to make it happen. So I recently came across the Frexim Bank's Impact Stories, a series highlighting businesses and some projects that they've supported across Africa and the Caribbean, and the real impact that support has actually had on the ground. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you, I'll keep it 100. These stories stood out to me partly because I do have a natural bias here. I'm Nigerian and Grenadian, and I've also lived in Ghana. So I have a bit of a vested interest. But beyond that, what pulled me in with these stories is that they were showing some of the how, which is rare. So first, Nigeria. Dangote has been a big player for a long time, but over the last decade, he has become one of the most significant industrial figures, not just in Africa, but I'd argue in the world. And this story is about much more than just one refinery. is about what it takes to industrialize Africa by Africans. Dangote talks about the scale of risk that he took to bring it to life and the Refocusing Bank's support for both the refinery and the fertilizer plant. When I heard about the Silver Sands project in Grenada, I was like, on the surface, looks like this is just about a hotel. But really it sits within a much bigger push from a Refocusing Bank to strengthen commercial exchange between Africa and the Caribbean and create platforms like the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum. And when that works well, the benefits should reach local entrepreneurs finally, local businesses finally, and the wider economy finally. And that is exactly the kind of trickle-down effect that I want to see more of. And then Ghana. What I found powerful about the Plot Enterprise story is that it shows what value addition really means. Once you process those beans, you create more value, more jobs, and more retained skills in that country. And that, for me, is the bigger point across all three. Progress is not just a slogan. It takes institutions willing to back African and Caribbean businesses properly to make those ambitions real. 3 different stories, one bigger theme. How do we keep more value in our own economies, build stronger industries, and create the kind of growth that actually reaches people on the ground? The 4 stories are on a Refocusing Bank's YouTube channel. And what I'll do is I'll start posting some of the stories in my stories so that you guys can see them as well. But head over there and have a look. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe,
Have a difficult history. The island has spent most of its independent history under some sort of IMF programme. And after its 15th bailout in 2013, IMF officials would begin their meetings with a dark joke. Has Jamaica crashed yet? Today, however, everything has changed. Jamaica has staged perhaps the most impressive fiscal recovery in modern history, with debt to GDP halving in a decade, and is now basically the IMF's favourite economy. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how Jamaica became a sort of Caribbean Germany, and what more general lessons there might be available. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Before we get into it, we should say a lot of this video comes from a series led by Robin Wigglesworth over at the Financial Times' Alphaville blog, so go and check that out if you want to know more. Anyway, let's start with some context. For most of its independent history, Jamaica was in some sort of economic crisis. While there was some pretty solid growth in the first decade after independence in 1962, once the oil price shock hit in 1973, GDP growth and income stagnated, unemployment rose, and crime became endemic. Wealthier, educated Jamaicans started leaving the country in ever larger numbers, triggering a so-called brain drain and pushing Jamaica's economy into a downward spiral. Despite this, the government kept on borrowing, pushing Jamaica's debt-to-GDP ratio up to frankly silly levels. It often rose above 100% of GDP and peaked at 212% in 1984. This would be dangerously high for basically any economy, let alone one as poor as Jamaica, which had a GDP per capita of just over $1,000 at the time. Just servicing this debt, i.e. paying off the interest, often accounted for more than half of all the government's revenues, and it looked like Jamaica was stuck in a debt trap. Even though the government pursued a policy of massive austerity, they were unable to reduce the overall debt burden, because recurring interest payments just kept them pinned down. This meant that Jamaica was constantly going to the IMF for bailouts, even though many Jamaicans thought the austerity measures required to get access to IMF funding were both cruel and ineffective, evidenced by the fact that, well, Jamaica had to keep going back. Nonetheless, in the late 2000s, with its debt-to-GDP ratio rising, Jamaica went to the IMF once again. In February 2010, the IMF approved a $1.3 billion loan, and the programme started off surprisingly well, with the fund noting in its first review that every target had been hit and growth was better than expected. However, the Jamaican government's cack-handed attempt to extradite gang leader Christopher Dudas Coke brought everything crumbling down. Coke was Jamaica's most powerful don, who basically ran the neighbourhood of Tivoli in Kingston as his own personal fiefdom. Everyone in the neighbourhood called him president, and Jamaican police had to ask him permission to enter. When the US first requested his extradition on drug and firearms charges in 2009, Jamaica's then Prime Minister, Bruce Golding, who also represented Tivoli Gardens as an MP, tried to tell them that it was a bad idea, but the US insisted, in part because they suspected Coke was funding Golding's party. Coke then turned Tivoli into his own personal fortress, with barricades and armed sentries, and the ensuing shootout, where Jamaican security services used helicopters and fired mortars on a residential neighbourhood that still held thousands of civilians, was a bloodbath. Over 100 people, including a large number of civilians, were killed, and there were reports of extrajudicial assassinations by the security services. Politically weakened, Golding tried to bolster his popularity by increasing public spending, violating the terms of the IMF's agreement and pushing up Jamaica's debt to GDP. In late 2011, Golding was forced out anyway, and his centre-right Jamaica Labour Party government was beaten in a landslide by the more left-wing People's National Party, the other big party in Jamaican politics. With debt nearing 150% of GDP, the PNP immediately went to the IMF for yet another loan. The IMF were understandably hesitant. This would be Jamaica's 15th IMF loan, and the last one had collapsed barely a year in. But after a year of intense lobbying, in 2013, Jamaica finally received a $2 billion lifeline. Everyone thought the programme was doomed. It demanded crippling austerity in a country that had a long history of fiscal incontinence and was already running a primary surplus of around 5% of GDP. However, that's not quite how things turned out. Jamaica successfully made further cuts to government spending and regularly ran primary surpluses between 7 and 8% of GDP. Jamaica's debt-to-GDP ratio duly fell from 147% in 2013 to 72% in 2023, with further declines expected in the coming years. Unemployment and poverty have fallen to record lows, inflation has been tamed, and in 2020 Jamaica formally exited its IMF programme. It's hard to overstate quite how incredible this is. Very few countries run surpluses, let alone ones representing 8% of GDP, and debt ratios are rising across basically the entire world. This austerity did limit growth to an average of about 0.75% a year, but that's risen to more like 2% today. So how did Jamaica pull this off, and are there any general lessons for other debt-addicted governments? Well, some of this is down to the usual stuff. Jamaica had some pretty strict fiscal rules, adherence to which was monitored by an independent body. The Jamaican experience is also another data point to suggest that anyone who wants to bring their debt-to-GDP ratio down should focus more on spending less rather than growing more. But the big lesson from Jamaica is the importance of cross-party consensus. In other words, this only worked because both the big parties in Jamaica, the JLP and the PNP, agreed it necessary to happen. The JLP actually took over from the PNP in 2016, but they stuck to the same fiscal rules and didn't weaponise the issue politically, like, say, David Cameron and George Osborne did in the UK. Cross-party consensus is necessary here, because without it, the other party would just use the newfound fiscal space for fun stuff, like tax cuts or more spending, which would make sustained surpluses impossible. This is sort of what's happened in the US. Neither party is even talking about the deficit, because they suspect the other one would just abuse any newfound fiscal space, which is what George W. Bush did with his tax cuts after Clinton's successive surpluses in the late 90s. Now, this cross-party consensus was made possible in Jamaica by some very specific political conditions, including the existence of a multilateral discussion forum called the Economic Programme Oversight Committee, which was set up years ago to deal with class divisions and political violence, and the fact that ordinary Jamaicans are far more wary of national debt than most electorates, thanks to their difficult history with it. Nonetheless, even if this is not easily generalised, this should still be an aspiration for other debt-addled economies. Fans of TLDR like you care about understanding the world around them. That's where today's sponsor Imprint comes into play. If you care about building a life of learning, then Imprint is the app for you. It's a new way to learn that turns your phone from an attention-sucking device to a tool for growth. You may have heard this before, but unless you've used the app, you likely haven't experienced something like this. That's because Imprint is beautifully illustrated and animated, creating a highly visual, bite-sized and interactive learning experience. It's the perfect antidote to a world where social media tries to keep us mindlessly dopamine scrolling day in and day out. Their library includes courses on topics like psychology, history, philosophy, finance, productivity, and many more, and quick reads you can consume in a single sitting. Since we last spoke to you about Imprint in September, I've done the philosophy course and am focusing on their course on the science of happiness. People study how to get in shape, how to eat right, and how to advance in their career. Understanding how humans are wired to be happy has been an interesting path to go down that I highly recommend to all of you. So make yourself feel better about your screen time, build a real habit of learning every day, and join the millions of people using Imprint. Plus, if you use the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen, the first 200 people will get 20% off an annual plan. Plus, they'll know that you came from us.
So myself, I've come to produce the account of the aid, support, relief packages, donations that have been given to the charitable organizations and the foundations and the entities of bodies that are currently working on the ground to assist with aid in Jamaica in this time. I'm going to try to cover the ones that come with recorded figures, but I must advise you, there's a lot that don't come with any recorded figures, so I can't add those to the calculation because I don't know what the figure is. There's also a lot of persons who are donated that is not recorded or publicized, so please bear that in mind. This is just to give you a good idea of what the major charitable organizations like Red Cross and those kind of foundations have gotten to help the Jamaican people, so we can also keep them accountable. Because sometimes we talk about the government, but we don't talk about these charities who are also stealing and very sticky finger and lie. So let's get straight into it. So the UK government have given Red Cross up to... So for some reason the record got corrupted. So that's 1 million Great Britain pound, and then I went on to say that the Canadian government gave 2 million Canadian dollars to the World Foods Program to help with food and logistics. The Cayman Island government has given Jamaica 200,000 in relief packages and is also expected to give us 1 million additional to that 200,000 in also relief packages and other aids. The IFRC, which is the Red Cross, has budgeted 19 million Swiss francs to target and assist 180,000 individuals for over the course of 24 months. Direct Relief, which is just unnamed donators, have given over 3 million to health facilities in Jamaica and also to the JNHF, which is the Jamaican National Health Fund, to provide them with medic packs to help with healthcare situations. AFJ, which is the American Friends of Jamaica, has given up to $1 million to multiple local charities to help. The Give Directly Foundation has given $900,000 to people that are in need in Jamaica. So this was given directly to people on the ground that are currently facing it. American Airlines and AA Advantage has given over $1.2 million to Red Cross for assistance. Or has given $200,000 to multiple charity groups that are on the ground. FFTP, which is Food for the Poor, has allocated 300,000 in providing aid to the Jamaican people. This is providing food, shelter, medical kits and all of that. The Miami Heat team has provided 1 million to a local charity to provide aid to the Jamaican people. The US government has allocated 11 million to multiple major charitable organizations in Jamaica and also to the government to provide relief packages, assistance, equipments and tools to assist with the aid needed by the Jamaican people. Sandals have initiated a fundraising effort to raise money to assist people. Now let me pause right there. So Sandals, let me talk to you. You are estimated to be net worth around 6 to 7 billion US dollars, and we're talking about doing a fundraiser at the time that people needs help. Now, currently, there's no record showing that Sandals Resource have given back any money to any charitable organization or provided any aid in whatsoever form that they can. And Sandals is one of those company that has built a company off the back of Jamaican people. Now I got beaten down as yet, but you need to come out and make the people them know if you do something, and if you don't do something, you have to go down. You don't want to hear about no fundraising efforts alone. I need you to match money. Me need to know if you spend money. Me need to send money. Can make all the money off of Jamaica. Now, to sum up the total in efforts, relief packages, aids that we have gotten from all of these charitable organizations and all of the money that has been spent and given and donated, we are estimated to have gotten, so I made a mistake in the original video, 7.2 billion after I rechecked the calculation. So it is now on us, as I have said, to watch people, especially like the Red Cross, and also do your research on the other charity organizations that are currently helping, so that the money just not missing. I know it is a lot of work, but it has to be done because our people need help, and we can't afford them people if you use this opportunity to make themselves richer. Big up on yourself and stay safe.
Yeah, Jamaicans, we are victims of gaslighting. Why do I say that? Crystal, why you come on here and go tell the people and say they are being gaslit? Yes, you are being gaslit. Now I'm making this comment, which I hope I'm able to freely make. So all the political animals, please do not jump into my comments and start, behaving like wild animals, okay? Love you all, but please keep it away. I'm just a hardworking Jamaican, just making my 2 cents, my comments, my opinion. Yes, I go to the polls and vote too, and I pay taxes. All right. So, having said so, why am I saying that we're being gaslit? We have sacrificed the quality of our lives to ensure that our debt to GDP ratio continues to decline. Presently, it is at 69 or approximately 70%. Our debt currently is $2.3 trillion and our gross domestic product is about $3.3 trillion. So you divide the debt by the money where we make, and so we come up with the rate, the 69 to 70%. So that means that is the rate at which we can cover our debt. Now before, it was 147%. So that basically means we were only able to drop a spoon full of water, 1 tablespoon, no, 1 teaspoon of water upon a forest fire. That's how we were trying to bring down our debt. But the government has successfully brought it down, and it's so good, and it's good for us. But I want us to understand that it never magically happened. It happened because we had to sacrifice the quality of life that we wanted, that we needed, and that we deserve to bring that down. It is at our expense. The government had to cut public spending to ensure that this happened. In 2013, the IMF laid down some stipulations, and one of those stipulations was that for every $100 that was spent, $7 for every $100, my apologies, not spent, every $100 that was collected in taxes, $7 had to be set aside to bringing down the debt. So therefore, it meant that while we are paying our taxes, and the taxes were to improve social infrastructure, there was a deficit where those things are concerned, because $7 out of the money, out of every Jamaican who pay tax, was going towards bringing down the debt. We applaud the government for making that decision and, of course, bringing down our debt, because it means that the nation now get a lot of favor with creditors and so on. But crediting, of course, means more debt. But anyway, I'm no economist, but I'm just making a point here that the quality of life that you feel in yourself, say, I should have live better than this. Say this is not my real life. It's a true feeling, and it's real. When you go to the supermarket and you sweat and you say, boy, my work so hard, why am I feel a little way, say I want to buy a bag of shrimp, or I want to buy a tray of grapes, or I want to, pick up 2 bottles of champagne or champagne Eh? Why me feel so stressed and overwhelmed for just take up 2 3 oxtail and my work so hard? It's not that you are too ambitious or your chest too high. It's the reality that you are sacrificing the quality of life to ensure that the country's debt is paid. And I sat and I thought about this, and I'm saying, why is it that it is not explained to the people in this way, in simple terms, to let us understand why the teachers' wages could not have increased when they were advocating at the time that they were speaking about it, why it is that the police officers couldn't get the wage increase that they wanted, and why it is that so many social infrastructures took so long to be developed. I mean, these things need to be explained to us, right? Now, we're having a problem. We're having a housing crisis, housing short. I don't think the government still meet them quota. They are the mark of the number of houses that they need to build to meet the demand. A lot of talk about those under 30, 35 or up to 35 can access a special grant for the down payment. But what about people like me? Me above 35. And we were waiting however long. All the millennials wave here. Waiting how long for opportunities like these. And they're just coming. But we are complaining. We are bawling. We are saying the gas price, food price, all of these things, it a dig out we eye. What we are being told, employment is at an all-time low. At approximately 4%, unemployment is down by 4%. And we're being told that poverty is also on the decline. And we're told that the Jamaican economy is booming and it's ripe for development. But why we feel so? We feel so because we have a ban with belly. And a lot of us, we are all sacrificing our quality of life to pay off this debt. And it needs to be explained to us like that. So when the people are complaining, it hurts when we are being told that things are looking up. Things are looking up for who? Right? This is a tale of the two economies. The macro, we now fix things and make it look good for IMF and so forth. But what about us? What about the kitchen table economy? It is very, 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 very difficult. And people may say, but sometimes things are dashed on a market for cheap. Dashed on a market for cheap. How hard it take for one person to earn $50? I just $1,000 add pan minimum wage. Come on, people. Barely over 100 US for minimum wage. Come on. So I believe we are being gaslit to question our reality, to feel as though everything is all right. It is okay. Not the way a ball boat. But we have been sacrificing our quality of life for far too long. Though it is for the benefit based on how it looks on the books to the IMF. But we have been suffering as a people for some of the poor financial decisions that have been made by previous governments, and may I dare say, even the current one. We have to speak the truth. But no worry yourself. You're not just under pressure, so. You're under pressure because you have been absorbing all the costs to ensure that this country flows and operates at the level that it should. So we are going deeper in our pocket for pay for certain simple public services. We are going deeper in our pocket to have basic necessities because public funding has been slashed and a significant part of your tax-paying dollar has been set aside from 2013 to bring down the debt. It's so important for me to say this because all of the big talk and the big language and the economics and all of those kinds of things, the regular Jamaican don't really understand. But that's just my little piece on what was said. There's so much more to be said, but just my little piece. Don't question your reality. Yeah, go through, and it's rough.
Thank you so much, Jamaicans in the building. I don't take your support for granted. My good people, you are the best of the best of the best. You always support this channel, and honestly speaking, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. In today's video, we are going to talk about the BRICS thing, and do you think that it's the answer for Jamaica at the moment? Remember, Jamaica has been depending on Western institutions like the IMF, like the World Bank, for their projects to be financed in Jamaica. And my good people, there is a big question that people are asking themselves at the moment as we speak. And of course, they are telling themselves, the Americans are telling themselves, there is another way, guys. Other than IMF, other than the World Bank, there is an option. Remember, this alternative is just BRICS, which consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now we have Jamaica in the building, and it's expanding. So some people some time back said that, you see, BRICS, it's like you have freedom. You are not being tied to any, shagala bagala thing. Have you ever been in this situation whereby someone is helping you, but it has to be tied with, they also must benefit from, helping you. That's what the Western institutions look like. And I can tell you, BRICS is really the answer for Jamaica. I don't know what you think about that. Or do you think that it's just a shift from one system to the next system? Guys, let's talk about Jamaica and the Western loan system, because this is the elephant in the building. Jamaica has had a relationship with the Western leaders from way back for so many years up to now. Talk about after independence. Growth in Jamaica was so strong, but I don't know what happened on the way, because things changed. And you know what? Debt started increasing at a very high speed. That shocked most of the people. Imagine by the year 2013, Jamaica's debt had already reached a shocking extreme level, that is around 147% of GDP. Not GDP per capita, but GDP. And I can tell you that's huge, man. That's huge. So, at some point, the island had to turn to the IMF, International Monetary Fund. And the IMF programs come with conditions, guys. If you are unable to pay back their money, you have to cut on spending in your economy. You have to increase taxes in your economy, and you have to maintain strict fiscal discipline. Imagine Jamaica had to follow through. And I can tell you, to be fair, of course this worked. It actually worked in some ways, because debt went down. Jamaican leaders, even their confidence went a little bit higher, and unemployment went down. But of course at a cost, not for free, because the public felt frustrated because they could see slow growth in their economy. there was no longer something that we called flexibility. And these are major issues to talk about when you talk about an economy of any country in the world. So most of the time when you borrow from the IMF or World Bank, you do not just get the money. You also get rules, guys. Imagine. And people don't see that. We only see the money. So today, Jamaica is still depending heavily on IMF, on World Bank. And even after Hurricane Melissa in the year 2025, towards the end of 2025, things messed up because, the country needed an urgent help. Like you couldn't do anything. They needed help and a quick help. So what happened next is that the IMF offered a massive financial package of up to $6.7 billion. That is both from World Bank and IMF. So that tells us everything. In times of crisis, Jamaica still turns to the West because who else? Anyway, that's where the money is. But the problem is that the island is slowing down economically, and that's a big problem. When growth of an economy is weak, that means that the debt will remain to be very, very high. So you will see many leaders and many Jamaicans asking, is this system really sustainable? When we depend on IMF and World Bank, is it really sustainable? For you is also watching, kindly comment down below. What do you think? And of course, there are those who don't really know what BRICS is. I know so many of the guys that we've played their clips here, they have actually explained BRICS. And I know by the time you are here, you already know what's BRICS. Guys, it's not a club, it's a vision. And I will talk of BRICS as a different global system. You see, BRICS countries, they represent a huge share of the world's economy. I think by now it's even larger than the American system. And of course, that's a very huge one. These countries, they did create their own institutions. They did create their own development bank. And that was very important because, at the end of the day, that's a financial safety net. And that acts as an alternative to the IMF. The goal was very simple. Very simple, guys, to just reduce dependence on the West. That was the only thing. And even more to reduce the reliance on the dollar currency. And that's a very big deal because the global system has always been dollar-centered. For instance, guys, if I want to buy something from Nigeria, do you know that I will have to use dollar to buy that item? I cannot use my own currency. I cannot use the currency over there. I mean, it's just chaotic. So, BRICS brings in less conditions because most of the time these Western laws, they mostly come with very strict rules, guys. But on the other hand, the BRICS financial system is viewed as to be more flexible compared to the Western one. And if you look at the other side of infrastructure funding, BRICS on this other end, they focus heavily on development projects like roads, energy, transport. And again, if you talk about geopolitical balance, guys, you know, this, if you look at it in general, mostly countries don't really want to rely on one power system. They want options. Africa is always crying for an option. And you know what? BRICS gives options, by the way. If you talk about global frustrations, there is a growing criticism of IMF, World Bank. People are saying that the two institutions, they keep developing countries to be dependent, not independent. Whether you will say yes or no, it's very true. But of course, BRICS is not perfect. It introduces something that we call a power imbalance. You know, if you look at a country like China, it dominates the BRICS economically. And I don't know, if you were asked a couple of questions, I don't know what you will say. If you were asked, like, do you think that by belonging to BRICS, you are going to escape the influence? Or are you just switching the influence? What will you say if you are asked? So the BRICS system also is kinda very different politically. It has different goals, and it's not a unified thing like most people think. Transparency issues is always there. You see, Western institutions are always very, very scrutinized, but BRICS, they do less scrutiny. And my good people, do you think BRICS is the answer to Jamaica or just an alternative? Because at the end of the day, Jamaica needs money, you know. It needs sustainable growth, strong institutions, economical independence. I don't know what you think about that. Thank you so much if you watched the clip up to this point. I do appreciate your presence. I'll see you in the next video.